I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Naima. We're three Black moms.
A number of years ago, when I was in college, my best girlfriends, Cheryl and Beverly, and I pledged AKA. And in the beginning, it was really nice. The women were very friendly. They had these nice outings, and they seemed like great African American women to have as friends. And then we were formally inducted. And we had situations where it began to be a little uncomfortable because of the hazing. The first night they had us on our knees with our arms locked together, and we had to move around in this fashion. Now, there were 22 of us, and that seemed to give us more power over the big sisters. But gradually, as different sisters left the line and our little fledgling group got smaller and smaller, the hazing got more and more intense. They were doing things besides calling us names and getting us up at 3 a.m. and making us jog around the park. They were kind of doing some rather mean things that got more and more physical as time got on. And Beverly, Cheryl, and I decided, if this is the price of sisterhood, we don't want it, and we depledged. And we heard of other things that had happened to friends. We had brothers that had pledged Q Psi Phi that had gotten beat up, punched in the eye, knocked around, all kinds of weird stuff. Okay, this is back, like I said, when I was in college in the 70s. And you would think that the hazing had kind of gone out of style. And yet, when you read any kind of current statistics, you find that one student a year dies from hazing from a fraternity or a sorority. And the thing that really caught my eye was when these two girls drowned in California. Their parents brought suit. They were pledging AKA, and they were afraid of water. And one of their instructions during a session was to go into the ocean and go swimming blindfolded. Well, the riptides were very high. The girls could not swim. The girls drowned. The parents brought suit. The college denied that they even had that sorority on their campus. And it was a big thing. And that was 20 years ago. So some of the things that we as Black women and Black men want is brotherhood and sisterhood. And a lot of the Greek organizations promise to give us that. Some of the most famous people, and just a few of them: Toni Morrison, Vice President Kamala Harris, Felicia Rashad, Maya Angelou, Rosa Parks, Jada Pinkett Smith are just some of the women who have pledged AKA. And on occasion, one of my friends at work wore this elaborate AKA jacket. It was beautiful. And I said, "Oh, you pledged AKA?" And she said, "Yeah, it was something foolish I did when I was in college." Okay, is it foolish? Should you warn your daughters and sons about some of the hazards of joining Greek fraternity organizations or sorority organizations? We had a friend when I was in college, my freshman year, who had pledged a white fraternity, and he had fallen off the boat during a party and he had drowned. And it was such a horrible incident. And so many of the people felt like, well, he should have pledged a Black fraternity. Those white brothers probably didn't care anything about him. They probably didn't even know he fell off the boat. Well, whatever the statistics are today, it is worth discussing whether or not true brotherhood and true sisterhood should hurt in that manner, and whether or not we want to instruct our young people about some of the hazards of pledging a Greek organization. Sisters, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'll go first. On our campus, and I attended the University of Nebraska Lincoln, which was and is a predominantly white institution. Actually, they have a acronym now, PWI.
Yeah, PWI.
And so we didn't have all of the Black Greek fraternities, but we had Kappa Alpha Psi. And my experience was really a lot of fun. Now I remember the pledging period. Matter of fact, when I was a freshman, and then some of our freshman friends were pledging, and they did a lot of silly things, and you see them, walking in a line, and the whole, a lot of the stuff. If you've seen School Days, a lot of that stuff, it is real. And then when we would go to, when we went to we were part of what was then Big Eight. We're now part of the Big Ten, but the Big Eight Council on Black Student Government, all the other schools, all the other predominantly white schools also had Black fraternities and sororities. And that's when we got the chance to see the whole cultural thing of the step show, and them, doing all the choreography for the
performances
and everything. Now, that is a specifically cultural thing for Black fraternities.
And sororities.
And sororities, yeah, absolutely. White Greek fraternities don't do that. That's not part of their thing. And so this was a chance for us to feel like we were connected with our culture, something unique. It bonded us together. And I happen to be, and then I don't know if they did this on you all's campuses, but they selected a group of sisters to be the Kappa sweethearts.
Yeah, the little sisters or whatever. Yeah.
So, we had this big program where we did our little step dance, and it was fun. It was really a lot of fun. So I remember it as being, and then one of the brothers told me the reason why I was selected was like, well, you always organize things, we know you have a lot of good ideas and stuff. So that was good. And so it did create a bond, and it did make us feel a sense of belonging, and you did have the kind of little cliquey thing that you're a part of. So I understand the drive to feel a part of something and to belong to something, and to want to pledge. Now, we didn't have a hazing problem on our campus, but I do know of those situations on campuses where the pledging process was ugly. And now we later got Zeta Phi Beta sorority on the campus, and that was good because a lot of those sisters, I know for a fact, a lot of them are still in contact with each other. They still interact. So one thing, it does give you a network of people that, if you really maintain your sisterhood and brotherhood, it can be a network of friendship and brotherhood and interaction for the rest of your life. It really can. And so that's a positive note. And then also my brother-in-law, he pledged Omega Psi Phi in college, and they, as older men in the fraternity, they do a lot of charitable work, and they give scholarships. And matter of fact, Omega Psi Phi fraternity gave Zakia, my daughter, a scholarship when she went to college. So they do a lot of positive things. Yeah, there is the silliness, and there are things that you might do that could be degrading when you pledge. And that's where I think we need to talk about with our children when they get ready to go off to college. If they're thinking of pledging, do some research and see what is that chapter like on your campus. I learned a lot about the history of a Black Greek organization when I went to one of their national conferences or something. What state? I don't know if it was Atlanta. I think it was in Atlanta we went to. And they were kind of giving the history of it. So the whole Black college network, the historically Black colleges and universities, there's a whole lot of history of a lot of things that we created when we began going to school and in higher education to really, I guess you could say, catch up to where whites had been for years, because in this country, our history was kind of crazy. So the college experience is really important for our children. And if you're going to a predominantly white institution, maintaining contact with your culture, your sense of community, that's very important as well. But there are some hazards, like you mentioned, Barbara, things that people do that are ugly. And I think that we
And
need
criminal.
to, and yeah, it can be. So we need to tell our children, look out for some things, and to really examine the chapters on their campus and the history of the kind of things that they've done, and see if they can really trust these people if they choose to pledge.
Okay, my turn.
Yes.
When I went to K-State, go Wildcats, they only had one black sorority. They had no, they had three black fraternities: Omega Psi Phi, Alpha Phi Alpha,
Kappa
and
Alpha
X
Psi.
Kappa Alpha Psi. So and so for the black girls, when we were in there in orientation, they told us, oh, well, we have all for you black girls, we only have one sorority, but you can watch our films. Never were we invited to join their sororities. Now, granted, this was back in the 70s, late 70s, but 70s nonetheless. So it was obvious to us that they did not want us in their space. This was also a PWI. Now, 40 years later, and I did consider joining the Deltas only because I liked the girls who were in the Deltas. And some of the nicest girls, one of the really nice girls on campus came to me and says, I'm thinking about pledging Delta. Would you consider pledging with me? But because of Barbara's like horrible experience, and I just felt, and I was not really a Greek kind of person. I was just different. That wasn't my community, and there was hazing back then. There was a lot, even with the little sister groups for the fraternities, the black fraternities. There was a lot of hazing back then with the men. There was a lot of hazing, and so I was not interested. Now, fast forward to the next century, and my daughter is going to school. Now, my daughter also went to K State, again, go Wildcats, which is still a PWI. And when she thought about pledging a sorority, and by then they had several others, AKAs had come. AKAs actually came on campus for us, I want to say like my junior year or so. And some of the girls, because they pledged out of the chapter out of KU. And so they did end up having AKAs while they were there. Now, years later, I used to hear about AKAs having the paper bag test, which some of us know. You put your hand up against a paper bag. If you're darker than the paper bag, you were not allowed to join. No, I'm I'm assuming that some of that foolishness has gone away. Of course, some of it has not. As we saw from school days and other things, there's still a lot of colorism that we still have to address. So anyway, when my daughter started talking about pledging, we had also talked, and I think Barbara also had talked to her about her experiences. But she did her own research, and she started talking to some of the young ladies at Sigma Gamma Rho. They're still part of the Divine Nine, which is the original Black Greek organizations. So they were part of the Divine Nine, and they were a small group. There was only maybe 5 or 6 of them on campus. But she liked the girls, and she said, you know, they kind of said, well, you can hang out with us even if you decide not to pledge, because they're technically, I'm told, not allowed to recruit. But she chose this group because she said they all looked different. There was some big, there was some small, there was some gay, there was some straight, there was, all kinds, there were all kinds of Black women. And she liked that. She's from Boston. She likes diversity. So when she decided to pledge, we talked about it. And the first thing I said is, okay, but I'm not paying for all of this stuff. You got a free college education. So I'm not paying anything that you're going to pay as far as dues and things like that. That's on you, because some of these can also get very expensive. Okay, mommy, and she worked from the time I think she was a sophomore, or either a sophomore or a junior. She always had several jobs on campus. So she paid the stuff. I paid for, we paid for everything else that she needed, but she liked having her own money. So Sarah it became a Sigma Gamma Rho. We flew out when she crossed over the line, and she talked, obviously there's some things they can't tell you, and they do have their own dance like all the other ones, and we've gone out
Own sound.
their own sound. And she's gone to the big convention, the 100th anniversary, which was last year, 2022. And you see thousands and thousands. That was in Indiana, and you see them all out there, and they're all doing their dance because they all learn it and other things. And now she's part of that grad chapter.
Hmm.
Now she leads the grad chapter here. They're trying to get students, I think, to start up the chapter. I think at Northeastern here, and she still has a lot of things that she does. They do scholarships, they do a lot of charity work. And so this is something that's going to be following her. She liked it because it also helped her find her people, even though her best friends are Deltas, helped her find her people on campus. Like we all need to find our people. And she also helped her with her own identity. As a biracial child, she had her own issues with people thinking that she was too white or too black, but not this, but not that, light skin, that kind of stuff. So she said that helped her come to grips with who she was as a person. Now, I'm not going to talk too much longer, but since then, she has connected with a lot of sorority sisters here. And when we were in Portugal and we had a crisis at our home because our dog, got, for all intents and purposes, she got sick, and the person who was supposed to board her would not board her. And we were 5 hours away on the other side of the world. One of her sorority sisters, she called her, and she had one of her sorority sisters step up, and Lori came to the house, and she stayed for 4 or 5 days and helped take care of our dog until Sarah could come back, because Sarah was coming back early. And this was somebody, she wasn't at the time, she wasn't that close to her, but because she asked her to do it, and the girl, it was like, good, I'm between jobs. I've got 4 roommates. I need to get out of my house for a while. And I said, whatever you need, food, whatever. And of course, we paid her too, because that's what you do. But Sarah has seen a lot of really positive things. I mean, like all people, we don't all get along, but she has had a lot of positive aspects from that. And I'm glad that she did her own research beforehand. And she did talk about the hazing because we were worried about it. But a lot of the things that they talk about hazing is not what we see that makes the news. So they're very careful about hazing, like some of the things that they have to learn the alphabet, and they have to do these certain songs and all the other stuff. We flew out when she went through the whole process and crossed over, um, and met everyone. And it's a big deal at K State now. At the time when I was there, it wasn't as big because you didn't have as much representation. But now, because they have more choices, more sororities, more fraternities, there are a lot more uh, kids who kind of wanted to do that. And in fact, she just went back recently to help reinvigorate that chapter, because after COVID, you lost a lot of people because people couldn't pledge for 2 years because there was nothing going on.
Right.
So it's been a positive for her. I also was not interested. Even now, I mean, I suppose I could join if I really wanted to, but to me, it was always, well, this is just somebody else is going to ask me for money later on when I get out of school. And I already belong to, Kansas State's Alumni Association, and I always send them money. So but I have seen the negative side of it, but I've also seen from Sarah, I've seen the positive side of it. And she is still involved as a grad chapter, and she still does, go out, and they still do community service, and they still, give scholarships. So those are the good sides of being part of Black Greek life. But you have to be careful that you're not doing it because you want to wear the colors, or you whatever your reasoning is, you have to make sure when your kid comes to you and says, Mom, I want to join whatever. Okay, do your research, find out these people that you like. What's the process like? Because, they may love it and they may need to walk away like you all did, Barbara.
Yeah. Well, I think that friendship and that camaraderie is a good thing. When I was living and working in Battle Creek, Michigan, one of my coworkers was an alpha, and he said he could depend on his brothers for anything and everything. If his car broke down, all he had to do, he would look in his little directory, find a brother who lived near him, call him up, and could depend on him. And I remember saying, well, that is really cool, but let me tell you, if I am in that same kind of situation, I need help. All I have to do is pray for the Lord to send me a Christian, and he has done it in the past. He'll do it again. And I have seen that happen. And I don't even have to make sure I got my little directory in my pocket. What if I left my directory at home? So it's a good conversation about, that kind of thing of being able to depend on someone when you needed it. Now, I had a very interesting experience when I was at home watching an old episode of Homer Simpson, which I hardly ever watch. But Homer Simpson had pledged a fraternity, and they told him, and he comes into this room and he sees all these paddles on the wall, and he goes, "Oh, what's those?" And they said, "Oh, you'll find out." And then
I remember that episode.
when he pledged and went over, he had to crawl between two rows of men, butt naked, blindfolded, while they each swatted his behind as hard as they could, and he had to crawl as fast as he could to get away from that. And I said, that sounds like the burning sands that AKA was always talking about, because our friends would always come out of Hell Week with these knees scarred up, and we never understood, where did that come from? So after I saw that episode, I said, I wonder if it's that.
Well, it's important, if your child is going to pledge, that they really do find out something about the pledging process. I mean, there are little silly things that you might end up doing, but nothing that is going to be humiliating or life-threatening. I don't think you need brother or sisterhood that badly where you're willing to put your life at risk. Everybody wants to belong to something, and it's a wonderful feeling. It's a beautiful feeling to have a community of people you can depend on. I mean, I'm part of a global Muslim community. My car got stuck in Wisconsin one time.
Mhm.
Nobody. Called one of my Muslim sisters. She never met me before. I stayed at her house overnight. She had just wonderful hospitality and everything, breakfast in the morning. And then, we got somebody that could help me get my car going. So when you belong to something, where people have agreed that they're going to be there for you no matter what, because you're family, it's a wonderful feeling. So I understand when people want to have that with a fraternity or sorority. Everything depends on the individuals involved, because if the people who are, and sometimes you have a pledge line that you all really become tight, and all of that, and you become those people you can depend on forever. So if you choose to pledge and you start pledging, and the people that you're with, you really feel like you formed a bond, and this is somebody who can be brother or sister for life, it's a good thing. But if you got some issues, even say that your big brother or big sister that you're pledging under, and they don't like you for some reason, like she's trying to steal my boyfriend kind of thing, then you can find yourself being the victim of some meanness, some hazing, some cruelty, and the incidences that you talked about, Barbara. People trying to humiliate you. They're jealous of you, want to cut your hair because they're really jealous of it. And women can do some vicious things when they're jealous.
Women can be vicious.
Yes. So just, you got to use your discernment. You got to use your instincts. If something doesn't feel right, and I'm glad you all made that decision to de-pledge, because sometimes friends will pressure you into staying when your heart is telling you, no, I can't do this. Say, oh, come on, stay with me, and then you end up in something you wish you had not. So just
Our
find
line went down from 22 people to 3.
yeah. So that lets you know that a lot of people just weren't feeling it, and it's
And
all
you know what? The
individual.
chapter should the conference, the head chapter should have
Yeah,
looked at that and found out why.
yeah,
Because that's a severe drop. That's
that
a
is
severe enough drop that they should have said, okay, what's
what's
going on
going
here that
on.
you all don't
Yeah,
have that? And see, also, and for fraternities, there's still like you all know, if you all know a Q, somebody who's got a brand on their arm.
yeah. We used to talk about that a lot too. But
There are still
yeah, we had that conflict, and I think they did a little bit in school days, but yeah, we had that
yes,
conflict. We tried
yes,
to tell
yes. And so you have to also understand that there may be some physical things that they sign on for.
yeah,
Some of these also in white fraternities, there's this kind of psychological sexual component with things. With white fraternities, there's a lot of drinking,
yeah,
and people have gotten alcohol poisoning and
yeah,
died from this kind of stuff. So there are a lot of different cultures, that we have to make sure that we're not borrowing from, and that we're not using slave mentality to beat and brand and whip. Now,
Yeah.
you gentlemen, if you want to put a brand on your arm, that's on you, but you do have to understand where that whole branding of Black folks came from.
yeah,
And so you have to do your history, and and maybe you can change a little bit of the culture. We don't have to say you have to be dropped like cotton or treated like you're made of feathers, but you do have to understand that this is supposed to be a point of pride
yeah,
and culture
yes,
and identity and
And
good
strength.
and brotherhood and
yeah,
sisterhood. So do your research if you want to do this, and understand it is going to cost you money. So don't ask your parents to fund this stuff for you. Get a job.
Well, and most of the time, sororities and fraternities, they'll have a lot of fundraisers. I remember us doing a whole lot of fundraisers.
Oh yeah, and they still
So
do.
yeah, so you just choose to be responsible for whatever the cost is of whatever y'all doing, because there's always going to be outfits that you're going to have alike for different events and all that. So you got to buy all the paraphernalia for your events, your step shows, or whatever. You're always going to have things that you have to buy, but it is your responsibility. If you make that decision to pledge, and you got to buy this, you got to buy that, you got to pay so much money for this or that, it's your responsibility. It's really not your parents, because you made that choice to be part of a social group, and it could be rewarding, and it could really be a lifelong friendship, a lifelong brotherhood, lifelong sisterhood, people that you can call out of nowhere, and they will come to your rescue, and all those things. It can be all of that, but realize it is your choice, and be aware if you start to feel uncomfortable, just like in any situation. If you start to feel uncomfortable, and you start to feel that perhaps they're doing things that are mean and dangerous, you might
Get out.
need to get out. Well, we've got to go. We thank you all so much, and feel free to leave your comments on our Facebook or YouTube channel, and like and subscribe. Hit that bell so that you can get notified every time we're live at 5 in Chicago or in the Midwest, and 6 o'clock on the East Coast, and wherever you are in the world, you can join us. Until next time, I'm Naima.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Barbara. We are 3 Black moms. Hi, I'm Barbara.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Naima. We're 3 Black moms.